calling for a commitment to justice and police reform. The families of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor also taking part, and one of the youngest voices to inspire the crowd, the granddaughter of Martin Luther King Jr.
And that march happening in Washington as another march happened right here in Atlanta. Channel 2 Samantha Manning begins our live Team 2 coverage from the Washington Mall. Samantha.
Yeah, plans for this rally have been in the works since George Floyd was killed in late May. Now, it has started to clear out over the last hour, but earlier floods of people were out here on the monument grounds right by the reflecting pond.
Genuine equality is why we are here today.
Passionate calls for action echoed across the nation's capital. The son of Martin Luther King Jr. stood in the very place his father was 57 years ago today for the March on Washington, when he delivered his historic I Have a Dream speech.
There's a knee upon the neck of democracy.
Crowds marched from the Lincoln Memorial to the MLK Jr. Memorial in a show of solidarity.
Me personally, I feel humbled to be here with a unity of people.
People traveled from across the country to be here. Generations of Americans, both old and young, including 5-year-old Morgan.
Right now, he's a cute little boy, almost 6 years old. At some point, society will start to view him differently.
George Floyd's sister spoke to the crowd about the nationwide protests since her brother's killing at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer in May. His family called for police reform.
We're here right now and have the power to make it happen.
And the father of Jacob Blake, the man shot by a police officer and paralyzed in Kenosha, Wisconsin, gave an emotional plea for an end to racial inequality.
Every black person in the United States is going to stand up.
A day to honor civil rights leaders who paved the way for today's rally and to push for new generations to continue to fight for social justice.
I had to be here in order to make sure that I did my part.
And something to note, organizers told everyone who participated in this today to wear a mask. And I can tell you from what we saw, the vast majority of people did follow that rule. Reporting live in Washington, Samantha Manning, Channel 2 Action News.
It's amazing, Samantha. You know, I think about those iconic images from 57 years ago. 2020, those images pretty powerful as well. Thank you so much for covering that for us. We, again, have team coverage for you, Justin.
And as thousands gathered at the nation's capital on this 57th anniversary of that March on D.C., as you mentioned, Lori, a smaller group held some signs and rallied in Atlanta.
Yeah, again, today's rally, a local version of the Get Your Knee Off Our Necks Commitment March.
A small but vocal group of marchers gathered Friday afternoon.
It's kind of shameful to know that we still have to deal with these same issues that have gone back through the 60s, 70s, as I grew up, and to know that we still are hurting. To get knee off our necks.
Edward McGee is the president of the Atlanta chapter of the National Action Network, the group that organized the National Commitment March in D.C. This chapter had planned to head to D.C., but once Georgia was labeled a hotspot for coronavirus, the plan changed. The purpose stayed the same.
The criminal reform, the gentlemen that have gotten shot in the back, and that's part of social justice and criminal reform. So those are our concerns.
Equal justice!
Alecia Washington has been part of the National Action Network locally for 2 years. She says the challenges around police violence against black men and women, like Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and now Jacob Blake, made her feel she had to come out.
All of their lives matter. And up to this point, nothing has really been important where they've made police accountable.
And while those holding signs demanding police reform say they know change takes time, they still want leaders to understand some matters must be addressed urgently.
So again, those marchers gathering today in Buckhead because the National Action Network had asked that all of the satellite marches be held in front of the offices of U.S. senators. Our content team was busy watching today's march in Washington and gathering iconic images during the ceremony. We posted them along with some insight about the original March on Washington. That's live right now on WSBTV.com.